Christmas Day 2006 is a day I will probably always remember. Let me preface this by saying I was a very lucky and privileged kid. However, opening up an Xbox 360 that morning was something that blew my mind. I mean, you've seen N64 Kid, like that, but probably with more teenage gunk and cringe. Along with the Xbox 360, which is still one of my favorite consoles of all time, if you couldn't tell, I received two very different games that provided two very different experiences. One was Burnout Revenge, which is still one of my most favorite racing games of all time. Maybe I'll have to do a video about that someday. But the other was the very first Gears of War. I gotta say, this game blew my mind. It was the first thing I played in high definition, the first time I played co-op over the internet while talking with my friend on Skype. It even sent my grandmother scurrying from the room with its incredibly gratuitous chainsaw violence. Even outside of my own rose-tinted glasses, Gears of War has left quite a legacy on both Xbox and gaming as a whole. And while the series has fallen to the wayside in recent years, the original trilogy will sit on my shelf for as long as I'm able to keep them. Much like Halo, Gears of War is a series that is very important to me personally. And even when its most recent entries are a little not great in my opinion, I'll always have a soft spot for the original trilogy. Call it nostalgia all you want, you know what this channel is all about, right? Anyway, let's celebrate E-Day by bursting through that E-hole and, I'm not sure where to go with this joke, but I'm sure it'd be gross, so let's just get into it. Welcome to a look back at the original Gears of War. Gears of War was released on November 7th, 2006 in the United States, but began its life journey back in 2001 as a concept piece titled Unreal Warfare. This original version of the game is incredibly different, as it was a multiplayer arena shooter focusing on mech suits and character classes. Honestly, as blasé as that sounds now, Unreal Warfare sounds years ahead of its time just on concept alone. Epic Games ultimately shelved the title and decided to focus on their Unreal Tournament series, which was still going strong back in the early 2000s. Of course, in an industry like gaming, it's hard to just scrap ideas, and so Gears of War eventually developed as a single-player squad-based cover shooter using these scraps of Unreal Warfare. Gears of War's lead developer, Cliff Bleszinski, or Cliffy B as he would soon evolve into, cites games such as Kill Switch for the original Xbox as an inspiration for the cover system, and Resident Evil 4 as the game that inspired the over-the-shoulder camera, giving Gears that close-up and visceral feeling. Hell, Cliffy even cites the Zelda series as an inspiration, saying that its environmental world building and focus on underground dungeons became a springboard idea for the team. Gears utilized the still new at the time Unreal Engine 3, which a lot of games in the 360 generation would use. You could always tell when a game had that Unreal Engine sheen on it. Despite forever persistent issues with texture poppin' and frame rate stutter, using the in-house engine saved Epic a ton of money on licensing, and the overall budget for Gears of War was about $10 million. Not too bad of a budget for a game that would go on to sell 1 million copies in its first 2 weeks. Gears of War would go on to become an inarguable success for Xbox, becoming the most played game on Xbox on its day of release. In fact, it overtook Halo 2 as the reigning champion of Xbox Live, a game that had sat in the #1 spot since it released way back in 2004. It was a pretty impressive feat at the time. And while Gears was popular, it was also a very important piece of media for Xbox as a whole. In 2005, a tech demo was shown at GDC behind closed doors, featuring early versions of Gears of War's main characters fighting monsters in a city street. Before Gears even had an official name, it was already pushing the envelope with its presentation, and Epic Games founder Tim Sweeney would use it as an example when he argued with Microsoft that the Xbox 360 needed to have its memory doubled, from a meager 256 megabytes to a whopping 512 megabytes. Yes, it would seem that we can thank Gears of War for the Xbox even being able to reach a 720p resolution, and who knows if the console would have had half the lifespan it did if it weren't for this decision. Not only did Microsoft increase the memory of the 360, causing an increase in build price and a huge shortage of consoles at release. Things never change, I guess. They also forked over a ton of money for a very memorable ad campaign. Now, I can't play it here unless I want to get smacked with copyright, but the Gears of War Mad World commercial still slaps. In my lifetime, there are a few video game ad campaigns that have really stuck with me. Halo 3's Believe campaign, Dead Space Scaring Moms, which was hilarious when I was a teen, but most of all, I'll always remember this beautiful commercial. I know, it leaves the taste of ash in my mouth to call a commercial beautiful, but this marketing campaign for Gears of War was one of the first times that I saw commercials for a bombastic action game that was more somber and downright depressing. It left a huge impression, and I think it's up there with some of the greats. Gears of War opens in a pretty grim way. 14 years have passed since the event known as Emergence Day, an event where the monstrous locust horde broke through the surface of the planet Sera and laid waste to the human population. Constant war has been fought by the reigning power, the Coalition of Ordered Governments, or the COG. COG soldiers, known as Gears because they had to be cute while naming things, and also Cliff Bleszinski was super into Metal Gear at the time, have been fighting to turn the tide, but to little avail. We take control of player character and literal wall of meat Marcus Fenix, a no-nonsense tough-as-nails soldier voiced by none other than Bender himself, John DiMaggio. Marcus was a naughty boy who was thrown into prison for deserting his post during battle, which seems not like him, but things have changed and now the COG need all the help they can get. Our friend Dominic Santiago breaks us out of prison while also bringing us a change of clothes. We make our way through the admittedly pretty disgusting prison when we come upon one of Gears' more interesting inclusions, split paths.
We've got two options. We can go back the way I came, through the guards' quarters. It takes time, but it's safe. Or we can go through the prison blocks and get right into the fight. Your choice.
Let's take the prison blocks. I'm ready to kick some ass.
Hell yeah, let's do it.
We're given the choice to do some training with the movement and weapons, or skip all that and get right into the action. It's cool to be able to skip the tutorial in a second playthrough, and later on this mechanic will be used to offer differing sections of some levels, which gives some replay incentive and is also fun to exploit when playing in one of Gears of War's best modes, co-op. While I didn't have a co-op partner for this playthrough, I have had the chance to play through the entire game in the past with a co-op partner, and I'd be remiss not to mention such a huge and fun part of the game. Yes, the entire game can be played through with a friend, and much like every other game in existence, it's just better with friends. Anyway, we fight our way through the prison, blasting our way through the game's enemy faction, the Locust. One thing I really love about Gears of War is that, at least with the information we have in the first game, the enemies are literally like mole men or evil goblins. It's really silly and fun, and I can't think of many other sci-fi shooter games where you fight literal mole men, except that game Inversion, that has mole men, right? I don't know. The Locust troops that we fight throughout the first level are pretty easy to take care of, and this prison sequence does a lot to try and sell the next-gen-ness of the game. Yes, it was still early in a console generation when gaming news outlets would say, "This is the first title that truly feels next-gen," whatever that means. In Gears' case, they focus on making the levels appear much larger than they actually are, making it feel like there's a whole world out there beyond the small hallways that Marcus and Dom are confined to. For instance, while crossing a small bridge, we see a helicopter crash into a tower and explode. The game even prompts us to watch in a cinematic camera angle and everything. At the end of the prison break, we rush outside and board a King Raven helicopter just in the nick of time, as a huge spider-like monster called a Corpser bursts from the ground in an attempt to get a beef jerky and Jack Daniels flavored lunch. Yeah, it's not the last we'll be seeing of that cute little guy either. Aboard the Raven, we meet Lieutenant Min Young Kim and Private Anthony Carmine, and we're told that we're being taken to a place called Embry Square in the COG capital of Ephyra. There, they'll meet with Colonel Victor Hoffman for orders. Marcus isn't super excited about the prospect of meeting up with this particular colonel, and Carmine pretty much asks Marcus for his autograph.
Hey, are you the Marcus Fenix? The one who fought at Aspio Fields?
Yep,
Wow, cool!
not really.
Upon arrival, Hoffman has some mean words for Marcus, but then they come under attack, and this is a great example of how the frame rate in this game seems to get halved in a lot of the cutscenes for some reason. In order to get the most 2006 experience possible, I am playing this on an original Xbox 360. In fact, this is my original disc and everything. I know about and have played the Ultimate Edition, and it's pretty good, but for some reason it always crashes on my PC. Anyway, the point is that this game runs at a eye-watering 30 frames per second. Most of the time. It often drops down into the 20s, or at some points even lower. I mean, I threw a grenade in this room and the resulting explosion blew up a bunch of boxes and my frame rate dipped down to like 4. It was actually sort of terrifying. But this is the experience I would have had in 2006, and back then I probably wouldn't have even noticed. I just think it's a fair point to bring up since a lot of this footage is going to look a little choppy. Also, you gotta love the mid-2000s Unreal Engine faces. We meet Anya, who from this point on only exists as a voice over the radio, and thank God because she looks like she's wearing a thick rubber mask of her own face. It's uncanny. Though I guess I shouldn't be surprised that Unreal Engine 3 couldn't produce anything feminine, it was all about the thick necks back then. Hoffman tasked Delta Squad with retrieving a device called the Resonator, which can map the underground lair of the Locust Horde. We fight our way towards the square to retrieve the Resonator from Alpha Squad, who are stuck behind enemy lines and have stopped all communication. The fight through the city really takes you through some beautiful locales, and I believe the devs wanted what they called a destroyed beauty motif through the entire game. Most of the buildings appear made out of stone with huge larger-than-life pillars and columns. Even the insides, while in disrepair from the fighting, are lavishly furnished and decorated. I really love this type of world building. It makes me think of the world that existed before the current events. The universe of Gears of War is racked with strife and conflict, but there was an attempt at conveying a real sense of culture and art here. Delta makes it to a government building known as the House of Sovereigns, and after a battle with enemies that had taken over the courtyard's defenses, they settle in to get their bearings. This is where Carmine would ascend from faceless squad fodder to memehood, which in the internet age is better than godhood. As Carmine complains about his rifle jamming, he gets shot right in the head.
Something's wrong with this thing! Ugh, it keeps jamming! Ugh, see?
Sniper! Take position!
Yes, the helmet didn't really do much after all. Despite Carmine only being part of your squad for half of Act 1, and being a literal faceless soldier, this made him incredibly popular among my group of friends, and in the Gears fandom as a whole. Carmine was even my multiplayer character throughout the original trilogy for quite a long time. Helmets off to you, Carmine. Sometimes an artist isn't worth anything until after he's dead. We fight through the House of Sovereigns and come upon one of Alpha Squad's soldiers, Augustus Cole, and after helping him fight off a wave of Locust attackers, the Cole train joins our crew as we continue to search for Alpha and the Resonator. Cole is another fan favorite, and his lovable, larger-than-life personality adds a bit of levity to the stone-faced grumblers that make up Delta. Soon after, we fight enemies known as Wretches, and while they tend to swarm you in large numbers, they're the perfect meal for Gears of War's shotgun, the lever-action Gnasher. Also, while these guys seem like a perfect chance to get an easy kill with the Lancer's chainsaw, that's actually usually a trap. Most of the time, stopping to saw these guys in half just ends up with the rest of the pack rushing you, and the chainsaw animation doesn't give you any sort of invincibility, so while it looks really awesome, it's usually a pretty risky move. Speaking of weapons, this is the point where we pick up one of the game's rarer power weapons, the Hammer of Dawn. The hammer is an orbital laser that turns most enemies into bits nearly immediately, with the caveat that you have to be outside and under the cover of the orbiting satellite for it to work. We use this to clear the surrounding area of cedars, these big tentacled monsters that shoot down helicopters by spitting at them. Finally, we use some rooftop machine guns to clear the street in front of Alpha's location, and with that we're introduced to Gears of War's final main squad member, Corporal Damon Baird, who from this point on is characterized by his quick-talking, wise-ass personality. He's the kind of guy who's always got something to say, even if he shouldn't.
You're Baird.
Yeah, that's right, asshole. Question is, who are you?
The reunion between Cole and Baird is cut short by the arrival of a Raven that's to pick us and the Resonator up. Unfortunately, we must have missed some of the Locust anti-air because the chopper is shot down and Delta is separated from Lieutenant Kim, and we're treated to a voiceover from an unknown Locust leader. Kim fights Locusts in the streets in a cutscene that's actually really impressive and cinematic for 2006. General Rom, a hulking Locust in black armor, easily kills Kim, and with that, Delta Squad is cut back down to 4.
Cut off the head of the small, and the body remains. We will win this war. It's only a matter of time.
The tension doesn't really die down as Delta becomes trapped inside a building with a near-invincible berserker that hunts down Marcus and Dom using its sense of hearing. Man, this part is still pretty tense, and back when I first played it, it definitely left an impression. I remember people at school talking about the berserker part, and learning how to time your dodges to roll out of its way just in the nick of time felt so cool and different. Not only did this section offer up a memorable encounter, it also served to break up the gameplay a bit. Gears has been a non-stop onslaught of action for nearly its entire time so far, so to put you up against an enemy by the end of Act 1 that you can't shoot, well, that's just damn near poetic. After tricking the Berserker into smashing through the walls of the building and into the streets outside, we turn the power of the Hammer of Dawn on the creature, cooking it alive inside its own armored skin. After reporting that the Berserker is dead and the Resonator is secure, Marcus is given a promotion to Sergeant and takes command of Delta Squad. As the official squad leader, you now have access to a very simple set of squad commands. Marcus can order Delta Squad to attack, take cover, and regroup, and while this seems like it would be helpful, the AI is kind of bad, so it honestly is just sort of useless most of the time. Sure, issuing the attack command can be helpful for focusing fire on enemies that have a lot more health, like boomers, but your AI is just so bad that they can't really handle most situations that you'd throw them into. A lot of the time they can all go down, which leads you to have to pick everyone off or run around giving everyone head pats to get them back up. This becomes especially frustrating in sections of the game where it's only Marcus and Dom, because Dom can go down quite easily and down squad mates can be killed by enemies, resulting in a game over. This is superbly annoying, and it happened to me multiple times in this playthrough. Hoffman can't send any more Ravens to pick us up, so we're told to take the Resonator to its deployment site at an emulsion processing facility. This is quite a hike from the capital city of Ophira, and Delta's told to pretty much figure it out themselves. Luckily, Dom comes up with an idea and leads us to a nearby stranded camp in search of an acquaintance by the name of Franklin. The stranded are civilians that refuse to be part of the COG and now live out in the ruins. They really don't like Gears, so we get the old rotten tomato treatment as soon as we show up. Luckily, Franklin owes Dom a favor, and we ask to borrow his ride, which happens to be a huge APC that could get us over to the emulsion facility. This is where we get another hint at the backstory underneath the Gears of War machismo, as Dom has been looking for his wife through any means necessary. Like Marcus being locked up for desertion, this just adds another layer, and while it's a simple backstory, it does make our characters at least a bit more likable. Baird and Cole stay behind at the camp as collateral, while Marcus and Dom have to make their way through the nighttime streets to the gas station where the APC is being serviced. Even though this sounds pretty romantic, our boys' moonlit stroll is cut short as we have to battle Locust forces while crossing a canal, and are introduced to a new enemy, the darkness-loving airborne krill. Basically, if you step out of the light during this section, you're just dead. It doesn't take much for the krill to pick you apart, but on the bright side, they are equal opportunity murderers and will take out enemies as well. Gears of War's gameplay, while not wholly original with its cover system, they can thank an Xbox game called Winback for that, is really fun and it still plays quite smoothly to this day. I don't really tire of the minute-to-minute gameplay of popping from cover to cover, but it is nice that the game attempts to break up the action a little bit. However, while managing the light to fight off the krill in the city streets is pretty fun, the end of the act is not. When we arrive at the service station, it almost immediately comes under attack from multiple waves of enemies. After fighting them off, we grab the APC and head towards Franklin's camp, with the only problem being the swarms of krill that can rip through the car. This means that we are required to sweep the incoming waves of krill with the top-mounted UV spotlight, with the major downside being that the car can't drive and shine its powered-up light beam at the same time. This leads you to have to drive through the streets while stopping every few feet to burn away waves of krill, and when they do catch up to you, they just circle you, causing constant damage. This section is probably the most annoying section in Gears 1, and even in co-op, it's just a clunky mess. We arrive back at the stranded outpost to find it under attack, and this is probably the best example of Gears of War 1 just really making the Xbox 360 buckle under its weight. Of course, later games, even ones in this series like Gears 3, would look even better and run at a much more stable frame rate on console, but hey, experience with the architecture goes a long way, and Gears of War was still an early release, though one that absolutely pushed the bar when it came to visual fidelity. Waves of Locust attack as we mow them down with turrets, sniper rifles, and grenades. All in all, this was probably the biggest battle in the game, and this is where the enemy variety really starts to shine. Gears starts us off easy, fighting Locust drones equipped with stock rifles and pistols. Every once in a while it would throw some wretches in there to come and get all up in your face. You'll start noticing near the end of Act 1 and in Act 2 that enemy foot soldiers are going to start standing out from one another visually, and this is going to indicate not only the type of gear that they're equipped with, but also their actions that they'll take during combat. See a drone with raggedy armor, no helmet, probably just a soldier that will shoot at you with its rifle from behind cover. On the other hand, a bare-chested Locust Grenadier is easy to pick out in a crowd, and it's a good thing because they have a tendency to rush you with shotguns, which can melt Marcus as fast as it does his enemies. Not only that, but if you drive them behind cover with blind firing, they'll try to flush you out with grenades. Boomers stand out with their towering frames and rumbling voices. By the way, it's quite polite for them to announce that they're trying to blow you up. And finally, Theron guards, who show up later in the campaign, are heavily armored, constantly hop between cover, and are equipped with the incredibly deadly torque bow, which can kill you in a single hit on higher difficulties. Now back together, Delta leaves with the APC and heads towards the abandoned emulsion plant. After walking some in the rain, we come upon the hulking ruin of metal, and strangely enough, everything here seems dead. There's no real movement besides a few flashes of wretches darting around on the rooftops, but I'm sure that's fine. This part's pretty cool, and even without many enemies, it's very moody. Eventually we find a stranded worker and have him show us where the basement is, before he falls through the floor and is killed by a bunch of wretches. The tension in this level finally breaks as we're attacked by drones while making it deeper into the facility. The final set piece here is a giant set of drills that Delta uses to drill deep down into the hollow. I just love how big everything in the Gears of War series feels. It's more apparent in Gears 2 and 3 with stuff like the assault derricks, but these things like these giant drill platforms, they just really tried hard to make everything seem larger than life. Of course, Delta splits up again as we make our way deep into the emulsion pits to plant the resonator at a drilling facility. By the way, emulsion is basically like gasoline and lava put together. It becomes a way bigger part of the series later, but for now, that's pretty much all you need to know. Also, the recent OBS update destroyed my footage for most of this underground section, so I'll probably be mostly using cutscene footage. Marcus and Dom fight off a corpser in a pretty simple boss fight where you have to get it to smash some hinges on a platform and drop itself into the emulsion below. Finally, we arrive at the facility deep underground and are introduced to the Theron guards that I mentioned before. We take over the platform and plant the resonator, triumphantly returning to the surface. Well, maybe not so triumphantly, because we're told that the resonator just sort of didn't work. It would seem that the Locust tunnel network was much larger than the COG expected, and the resonator was just not able to map all of it. So, it's time for Plan B. Throughout Gears 1, Baird has been fiddling with a device that he discovered and finds that located on it is a map of the Locust tunnels that's almost complete, along with a link to a place named Barrett Academy, which is where Marcus Fenix's father worked as a scientist. Delta fights through the streets, eventually splitting up once more so that Baird and Cole can escort some wounded. It feels pretty nice to be out of the caves at this point, as the underground portions of Gears of War 1, it's not super long, but due to the repetitive nature of the visual design, it feels like a slog. We even get to fight through a conservatory filled with foliage, and there's another berserker. Okay, so during this playthrough, I had totally forgotten about this second berserker, so the moment where it just casually walks around the corner and you come face to face with it almost gave me a heart attack. This time we have to kill her by tricking her into knocking a hole into the ceiling and cooking her with the Hammer of Dawn once again. Finally, we arrive at Marcus's old house and receive a call from Baird letting us know that there's a perfectly good APC parked in the backyard, which is a great getaway vehicle. We search through the abandoned mansion and come upon a secret laboratory in the cellar, and inside we find a computer containing a full map of the Locust Hollow. What they're seeing blows Marcus and Dom's minds, as the Locust tunnels seem to honeycomb the crust of the entire planet, much bigger than the COG ever expected. We defend the house while the data is downloaded, and then make a run for it past a bunch of enemies towards the APC. This set of chapters actually does a lot to set up some bigger questions for the world building. Why did Marcus's dad have a secret lab in his basement with a full map of the Locust tunnels? Who knows, but that answer doesn't come up until Gears of War 3, the quest for more money. The final act follows Marcus and Dom as they board an armored train carrying the light mass bomb to the best known detonation point. Locust have boarded the train and we fight through them car to car until we fight the third and final berserker of the game. At this point the fear factor's pretty much gone and we trick the beast onto a train car and blow up a big fuel tank, disconnecting it from the rest of the train. Finally, we make it to the last section and come face to face with General Rom, the Locust leader who gutted Kim back at the end of Act 1. This final boss fight isn't exactly difficult by any means, but it can be a little janky. Rom surrounds himself with a shield of krill, which makes him impervious to damage. You can lure him into the lights around the train car to disperse his shield and shoot him, but the krill will also attack you if you step into the shadows. Just like earlier in the game, the krill kill you almost instantly, and they can also kill your AI-controlled partner, which causes an immediate game over. Rom himself also carries a huge machine gun, so he's no pushover, but with the help of about 9 torque bow headshots, we finally take the big guy down. The train plummets into an emulsion pit as Marcus and Dom jump on board a helicopter, reuniting them with Baird and Cole one last time. We see the tunnels get completely destroyed, but while this should be a triumphant ending for the COG, we actually hear an ominous voiceover from the unnamed Locust Queen once again, ensuring us that the Locust will never stop in their march on the surface. And that was the end of the line for Gears of War, at least for the time being. While the producers would say that they planned Gears as a standalone title, I don't exactly believe them because they left a lot of threads hanging. Ones that don't necessarily leave you unsatisfied, but do end up leaving you wanting more. Besides the co-op mode, where you can play through the full game with a friend, Gears of War also offered a full suite of online multiplayer modes. This came out before the time where every game under the sun had to have a multiplayer mode because people definitely would play Spec Ops: The Line's multiplayer for years after release, I'm sure. So Gears releasing with enough excitement behind the multiplayer modes to dethrone Halo 2 as the #1 Xbox Live game was something to behold. Overall, Gears of War was not just what the Xbox 360 needed in 2006, it's what gamers wanted. Halo had already laid the groundwork on the original Xbox for the more mature image that Microsoft's console would adopt. But I believe Gears is what gave it that final push to be picked as the favorite among the hardcore gamers of the 7th console generation. It was grim, dark, and manly to an almost comical extent, but at the end of the day, who knows where the Xbox brand would be if it wasn't for Gears of War. Hey there and welcome to today's end card. I'm going to start off immediately by thanking Lord Kagai, Brian Sanchez, Video Game Player 75, and Al Sturza for being channel members. Thank you guys very much. It's so cool to see like more people every time. It's really neat. If you made it to the end card, please be sure to let me know, and thank you very much. This was a video I've been wanting to make for a really long time. I've been wanting to do more video game stuff because I don't want to just get pushed into doing like only mecha anime. I don't want to be pigeonholed like that. So even if this video like view-wise doesn't do as good, that is okay. It's a topic I wanted to cover, a game that's important to me, and something I wanted to do. And at the end of the day, that's what I care about. Anyway, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Gears of War was always like a huge game when I was a teenager. So like me and my friends would play Gears. It was mostly Gears 2, honestly, with the Horde mode and multiplayer. But we would just play it a fuck ton. Like that was one of the games that we were always on. Gears 1 was sort of my thing, and then my friends hopped on it after I had Gears 1, and they all kind of got into Gears 2. Gears 1's multiplayer was fucking hard, man. I didn't even show any really in this video because like Gears 2's multiplayer is kind of where it was at, just because 1's was so hardcore. Like it really, you know, you really had to be on your game in Gears 1's multiplayer. Anyway, in the future, I'll probably do Gears 2. Gears 2 is my favorite out of the trilogy, I think, so it would be really cool to get a Gears of War 2 video done as well. So be on the lookout for that. Also be on the lookout for some special videos during the Halloween season. And also be on the lookout for Ratchet & Clank, because I said I would do a Ratchet & Clank video, and I really want to, so that'll be out at some point. Anyway, thank you so much again for watching. If you want to become a channel member, go right ahead. You are not required to do so, but it is very much appreciated. And you have a great day.